Hello and welcome back to Living Life Simply. My name is Racheli if you're new here, and in today's video I wanted to share with you my experience shopping zero waste and give you some tips that hopefully will help you. So I want to start off by saying that I understand that everyone is in a different situation, both in location and finances. So for example, I know for myself, my budget does not allow me to buy fresh produce at my zero waste shop, but only the bulk dry goods. So that's what I do. And I do end up going to Trader Joe's where I buy my fresh produce, and sadly most of them are packaged in plastic. And that is something I had to accept. It did take me time, but you need to remember that not all the responsibility lies on you, but rather also on the corporations. And hopefully with time, more and more responsibility lies in corporations to make changes versus on us as consumers. And something we can do as consumers is always go to those corporations and ask them to reduce their plastic waste and their environmental impact. And as I said, it can take some time, but I still hold hope that if more and more people become conscious of it and more people request corporations to do their best to be low waste, with time that can happen. And another important thing to keep in mind is that every product you buy already has an environmental footprint before it even reaches the store, based on how it's grown, how it's harvested, how it's transported. All of these different variables and many more affect the footprint of the item, whether it is packaged in plastic at the store or not. And at the end of the day, all you can do is your best to reduce your impact on the planet with the resources that are available to you. If you haven't found yet a zero waste shop near you, I actually have two websites that I want to recommend. I'm not affiliated to those websites in any way. I just found them and I think they might be helpful. And one of them is for people in the US, where there is a list by state of zero waste shops. And this website is called Litterless. I will be leaving the link in the description below so you can check it out if you live here in the US. And if you don't live in the US, I found another website called Zero Waste Home, and there you just search your location around the world and it will give you a map with the locations as well as the names of the places where you can buy zero waste. And you can also add your own. So actually, if you want to help others who are looking for zero waste shops, you can add a zero waste shop you're aware of in case it's not in the map already. And that way we can slowly grow more and more the data of where people can find zero waste shops. So definitely check those websites out. I will link them both down in the description below. And now let's get into how I actually zero waste shop once I'm ready to go. The first thing I do when I'm ready to go to the zero waste shop is look through my cupboards and see what items are empty and what items need refill. And I take note of that. If they're completely empty, I just take the jars out of my cupboard. And I do like to keep my things inside of glass jars, both because of the aesthetic of it, but mainly because it does keep the products fresh, I've noticed. And when I started zero waste shopping, I still was not really aware what zero waste was all about, and I decided to go out and buy new mason jars. But now I know that it's much better to just reuse any empty jars that you have. So I have had these jars now for about 5 years, and I'll keep using them just because it's gonna be another waste to throw them out. But once they need replacing, I will definitely replace them with empty glass jars that I already own. And there are definitely items that I store inside of reused glass jars, such as I like to use my jam jars for loose leaf tea, or the tomato paste jars for my spices. And something I like to do in order to make them a little bit more aesthetic is to actually remove the label from the jar that I'm reusing. This is of course not necessary, but if you want that aesthetic look, you can definitely do it. And I have a video with 3 easy steps on how you can do it that I will link up here as well as in the description below, so feel free to check that out if you want to remove the labels from your jars. Once I know what I'm missing, I go ahead and put all the jars inside a reusable bag, and I also take with me some mesh bags that I've had for about 5 years. And the purpose of the mesh bag is either for items that I just need a refill and the jar is not completely empty. That way when I get home, I can just pass it from the mesh bag into the jar. Or the other thing is that sometimes my zero waste shop does have great sale on the fresh produce, and I do end up buying 1 or 2 fresh produce from there, and I like using the mesh bags to put them in. In addition, something that I take are some little Ziploc plastic bags that I use for my spices. Normally the jars for my spices are not fully empty, so that means they just need a refill, and you can't really put spices inside of a mesh bag. So I use these that I actually started using when the pandemic hit, and I've been reusing them ever since. So that's about 1.5 years, 2 years, and I'll keep using them for however long I can. Once you go into the zero waste shop for the first time, there are 2 things you should do. The first is to weigh your empty jars and write their weight on the jar. So I personally, the first time, just did it using a sticker that they had and a pen that they had at my zero waste shop. But now I realize that I can definitely avoid using stickers, and I can just straight up write it with a Sharpie on my jar. So I do suggest that the first time you definitely take a Sharpie with you so that you can write the tear weight, it's called, the weight of the jar without anything inside of it. And the other thing you should be writing on your jar is the PLU number of the item you're buying. And the PLU number is the price lookup number. This is what the cashier will use in order to know what item you're buying, and normally the container from where you're filling that item will have the PLU number on it. And again, the cashier will be using the tear weight to deduct the empty jar weight from the jar filled with the item you choose. So those are 2 important points of information that you want to give to the cashier. And since you're probably going to be reusing the same jar for the same item, you can just write it, as I said, with a Sharpie on it. I normally like to do that on the bottom of the jar, and then either on the side or on the lid is where I write the name of the item, just so it helps me know what I have inside of it. And something else I found helpful was buying a mason jar funnel, because it allowed me to easily get everything into the mason jar. Before, it used to be a little bit of a challenge. And actually on my last trip to the zero waste shop, I noticed that now they have their own mason jar funnels that customers can use. So when you go to your zero waste shop, you can definitely check that and decide whether you want to purchase one, or if they have one for you, then you can definitely use that. And once I'm done filling the jars and checking if any of the produce are on sale, I head over to the fridges where they have a large selection of plant-based milks, cheeses, eggs, and meats that I personally don't often buy from, but sometimes if I have a craving, for example, for the Beyond Meatballs or some cheese, I do buy it. And I think it's really important that you don't feel guilty about that, even though it is of course packaged. But it's important to remember that by eating plant-based, you're already reducing so much of your footprint on the environment. So if you have this craving, just satisfy it and don't feel guilty about buying something that is wrapped in plastic once in a while. And then finally, I head to the cashier. The cashier will know how to deduct the tear weight from your items, as well as look them up through the PLU. So that's why it's so important that you do write them on your mason jars. It makes it easy for them. And that is all that there is to zero waste shopping, at least from my experience. And I know that I feel very good after I leave my zero waste shop. First of all, it's such a nice and calming environment. And secondly, I'm purchasing from a local business and supporting a local business. And thirdly, I feel very good that I have been able to buy at least some of my groceries without any packaging. Yeah, that's why I personally really enjoy zero waste shopping. And I hope you found this video enjoyable and helpful. If you did, make sure to like it. If this was your first time here, I would love for you to subscribe down below and join the Living Life Simply community. I would also love to hear what tips you guys have for zero waste shopping and your experience. So please make sure to let me know in the comments below and share it with our community. And feel free to share this video with whoever you think will find this helpful. I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!